Okay, there we are. Welcome back, everyone. Tonight, I am planning on going through and doing more of the visual tree testing stuff that I had worked on last night or last week. Was also going to go through and do a couple highlights of just kind of various things throughout the week, just because I do a bunch of stuff in my day-to-day, and figured I would share a few things. So, a couple problems and a couple issues that I had made before. Right, so I'm going to flip over here and let me grab the right window. So on the material design and Xaml project, we normally have the pack icons that are supposed to get updated on a nightly basis. I've got this pipeline here that goes out on a nightly basis, pulls down the latest material design icons, and if there's any changes to those, it opens up a PR automatically for me, which is great. However, you'll note this long string of red. This also was helpful in diagnosing when apparently I did not have notifications that this pipeline was failing. So once I realized it was failing, I went in and went to take a look at it. And I figured I would show people this because I spent way too long looking at this. So this is a very simple release pipeline. It does have a nightly trigger on it. The steps are clone our tooling repo that does the icon update, compile it, run it to generate the icons, and then push changes if there are any. You'll note it's checking on the git status to look for if there's any modifications to the pack icon CS, right? So that is the sum total of it, and then create pull request, which is great. But what was happening is it was failing on this step here. Specifically, it was failing because I had selected latest on Visual Studio, right? And the problem is there are elements of the project that are using the latest C#, and it requires Visual Studio 2019 to compile. Now, unfortunately, latest should have gotten me Visual Studio 2019. I tried selecting Visual Studio 2019. This also did not give me the latest Visual Studio. What was ending up happening is it was always falling back to Visual Studio 2017 and failing to compile, which confused me when I explicitly specified 2019. So what it turns out the problem is the pipeline that this was running on, for some reason, and I'm not entirely clear how it happened, was set back to here, pointing to Visual Studio on 2017 on Windows 2016, which apparently this build task does not check that when you ask for 2019, that 2019 is actually installed and is perfectly happy to go through and give you the wrong version of Visual Studio. So just as a little gotcha there for anybody who might run into this. So that was a fun thing. There was also an issue, I do apologize because I caused it several weeks ago, where the pre-release versions of Material Design were not appropriately being marked as 3.2.0. They were 3.1.3, I believe. And so that has now been resolved, and the latest NuGets that are out there, let's see, Material Design, right? The latest versions out here are coming in as 3.2.0 properly, and these are building out as one would hope. So that was a bit of an issue, but that has now since been resolved. So both of those, let me see. I feel like there was something else I was going to mention, and I don't remember what it was. Okay. For anyone who wants a bit of a brain teaser, I will drop the link in the chat. There's a little brain teaser here that I put together earlier this week. So the idea is you've got a couple of unit tests, right? You've got this has stuff class that has some property on it, right? And the idea is you need to implement this class and whatever code is necessary to make both of these unit tests pass. That's it. So if you want to know the answer, you can click the revisions tab. You'll notice there's two revisions. The first one has the solution in it, and then I deleted it. That way, if somebody wants to find it, you can click it here. So if the other way you can get to here, let's see, GitHub, kibu.dev. That'll get you to my GitHub, and then you can just hit on the gist, and you can this is the latest one out there. So the Brain Teaser Collection Fund. So for anybody who wants a little bit of that. Okay, back to where I was going, I think. Yes. So last time we had looked at a UI testing framework that I was building out that let us go through and do visual tree level testing, because UI tests do not let you just blindly access everything on the visual tree, which is fine when you're testing it as though you were a user. It is not fine when you are a theming or control author and you really want to do some assertions on your UI level, right? Which is effectively what we want to do. So I did eventually track down the move to element problem, so I was going to show the implementation there. So the total hack, and I will emphasize total hack here, is we grab the window position and we move to the window, and then the offset positions that we feed it are relative to our window. So that's the solution. Feels a little yucky, but it works. So don't like it. Wish there was a better way to go back and forth between these things, but this seems to be the closest way to line it up. So effectively, the elements coordinates are always in terms of the window. We can then use Appium to position the cursor based on the window, but with an offset so we can get down to the correct coordinates. So that's how that guy ended up working out, and that worked great. And that let us go through and effectively write this opacity bit of the test, where we can do some work where we start off and we assert that the opacity on the mouse over border is 0. We'll move the mouse over it, and then we'll wait, because there's going to be some period of time where, because that opacity is done via a storyboard, it's going to animate in. This is set way too high. In fact, this should probably go down. That this thing should animate in a fraction of a second. So this wait basically, rather than telling you what it is, I'll just show you. This is effectively my own little wait spinner, so that it will go through, do the action, and on success break out of the loop. Otherwise, it will sit and spin until some elapsed time has passed. So that is all that occurs, and then it will throw a timeout exception if the timeout passes, which is great. That way I can just feed it an arbitrary delegate and say, you know, I'm going to wait. Because there's going to be times when doing this sort of testing where it's not trivial to know when something's done due to storyboards and animations. And the two possibilities are try to query out the storyboard and get those animations, which I might do some level of that with the visual tree, or I'm sorry, the visual state manager. We'll see. For now, this will have to suffice. Or any just background timer type stuff where there may be something happening there that's on a slight delay. Like a dispatcher begin invoke would be a prime example, where it's going to queue up a delegate to be executed on the primary UI dispatcher, but we don't quite know exactly when that's going to happen. Sometime in the future, probably not that long, right? So this got me going, and then you'll note I intentionally didn't scroll down. And then I got thinking that part of the problem on a lot of the material design library right now is we put in all of this theming stuff. And unfortunately, a lot of that was done with very little regard for accessibility, right? It was done kind of eye shot based upon, oh, does this look good? Sure, let's go with that, right? And I'm going to fix this var because it's bothering me. Hey, control period. Oh, there it is. Sorry, the Karnak is confusing me. So there's all of these cases, and I'm very confident I can think of a lot of our themes right now that probably don't meet the material design accessibility spec. What do I mean by that? On the material design page, there is an accessibilities option, and down color and contrast. So down here underneath color and contrast, there's this table right here, this text type. This is what is key, right? There is a expected luminance between the background and foreground of your text. And so you can see some samples down here where background is dark, foreground is light. It's easy to read. These two examples on the side, much more difficult to read, right? And there is a standardized way of measuring what is that contrast between my background and foreground. And so with large text, if you're at 14 point or bigger up, it's expected to be at least 3:1 on that contrast ratio. And small text, it's expected to be 4.5 to 1. And so if we look here, we can dive into the World Wide Web Consortium. But there are, let's see, I think we can dive over here. There are a whole bunch of information, and you can dive through all of the links here to figure out how this contrast is being done. The key thing here is I believe I've already done it. So I have this contrast. So one, the contrast ratio is defined this way. So L1 plus 0.05 divided by L2 plus 0.05, where L1 is the relative luminance of the lighter color. So irrespective of which order these are passed in, L1 and L2 have to be ordered, right? And so we have this method down here that grabs the relative luminance of each of these and then goes through, does the formula. We've got this method here. I've got the links in here as well, showing the relative luminance and how this is calculated out. I believe I have done this correctly, but I have not tested this yet. This is just as close as I think I've gotten. So built all of these out. You'll note these are floats, not doubles, because we don't need double floating point precision. We just need ballpark fractions, right? Ultimately, we're looking to get numbers that are like 4.5 is our goal, right? We don't need a lot of decimal places or a huge degree of accuracy. So we are going with floats because that seemed easy enough for me. So this guy here lets us calculate the relative luminance, which is great. But now we come back here. So now that leads us to a bit of a problem. So our list box item, inside of its template, let's go and look at this guy. This was a great one to pick on because this just exposed all of my assumptions right away. Oh, and it felt both good and horrible to have everything I assumed be wrong. So on the list box item, once I find list box item. So there's a I'm going to collapse the visual state groups. So the key part here is there's a couple elements here, right? So the mouse over border, you'll note this is the border that we grab, whose opacity gets changed when you move the mouse over it. Great. This is the guy that we're going to grab, but you'll note his background is set based on opacity of the foreground. And so the actual background, because this background is pulling the foreground brush, right? So the foreground brush is dark, but it's only taking its opacity from 0 to 0.1, right? I've got a test. If I get this far down, I can assert that my opacity went to 1/10, right? So I know this guy is not fully opaque. He's mostly transparent. So the question is, what actually is that background color? And the only way to get all the way to that background color, because in our test case, we go all the way up to the window before we actually get a solid color specified, because everything's either set as transparent, right, or not set, so it effectively visually looks transparent, right? So the goal then is to figure out what is the background color on this so that we can detect what it is. It's easy enough to get the foreground color for the list box, right? The foreground, we can just pull the list box item and pull its foreground. That's easy enough to do. But the background gets very, very difficult. So that is where we are going next, because ultimately we want to get the effective background, right? So we want to get, so this background method right here just grabs the background property. Nothing fancy, which is not helpful because it's going to give us the wrong answer, right? Because if we pull the background property off the mouse over border, you'll note the mouse over border his background is going to be mostly wrong. So that's not helpful. So we need to do something better. So here is the game plan. And I started this. Sorry, my headphones are deciding they don't want to help, and I need a drink. Oh, fun sample. I do not have good painting ability, but my wife does. So I don't know how well that's coming through, but public static void main system console right line hello world. I painted this many years ago. I think it was Visual Studio 2015 days. Not 100%. And yes, there is Mountain Dew in it, because that is how you code. Mountain Dew in a Visual Studio goblet. That seems appropriate to me. Right. Where we are going and how we're going to get this information. So back in our testing library, I went through and added a protocol buffer method that says, rather than just get property, which is what we were using to get to the background before, I added this get effective background, right? I want something that's going to do a little bit more effort for me rather than just retrieve the individual property. So what does the implementation look like? So first of all, we're going to start from an element, right? In this case, I think we're going to point it at that same border or the list box item, probably the border. It doesn't really matter. No, definitely the border. Yes, definitely the border. And we are going to walk up the visual tree and effectively flatten the colors. So we're going to start with transparent, and this little ancestors method here just enumerates up the visual tree, right? So it starts with the element while the element's not null, grabs the element's parent. If the element is the desired type, return it, and then keep iterating, right? All the way up to the top. So this guy here, and the key part is he does also return element as his first one, right? So element will be part of the set that is returned, assuming element is a control. It looks for a solid color brush, and it is going to air out if it sees anything that is not a solid color brush or unset, right? Because ultimately, I can't do a lot with that. If I don't get a solid color brush, and I get like a gradient brush, right? I thought about getting fancy and like doing some drawing and rendering, and that's a lot of work. Was not going to do it. I also considered things like screenshotting the element and then trying to extract the color that way. That also seemed like a pain in the neck. We may come back to that at some point, but for now, this is what we're doing. And then the key part is it takes the background color and flattens it with this color. So in here, what it does is it effectively combines the two colors together, right, with the appropriate alpha to try and get an effective color. So this is effectively the reverse of a value converter that is already in the material design library. I believe we've got a converter here, something like remove alpha. Yeah, remove alpha brush converter. So this same formula here that we use to strip the alpha off and effectively calculate what a color would be if it didn't have an alpha, we're doing almost the reverse here. This method I wrote, and then I went to bed without running it. And that's where I left off. So that's where we're starting. So I think it might work. I have no reason to doubt otherwise. I'm noticing that I'm returning alpha, but this flattened color thing is effectively going to strip alpha. Not sure if I care. We'll see. We shall see. So the goal then is to use this on the client side. So what we want to do is go back to our testing library, and on our visual element, rather than get property, I think we want task iValue effective background. And I'm almost wondering if maybe, given that this is expected to return a color, I'm going to move it down here. These methods down here, I'm not overly a fan of. they feel like there's a lot of tight coupling here. Let's see. Oh, and just for fun, I turned nullability on the library because why not? So there are probably a ton of nullability warnings. I figured I'd just start fixing them as they showed up. Because ultimately, I do want the nullable reference types turned on. So we will probably encounter a bunch of those and just start fixing them. Okay, so visual element here. You have an autocode button, implement method for me. Where did you put my method? Let's see, why? Oh, nullability doesn't match. Let me fix that for you. Thanks. Appreciate that. Get effective background. We are going to move you up. Was it Alt? Boop. Something like that. Boom. So selected Alt up arrow, by the way, if that wasn't obvious. So let's look at get property background. What are you suggesting? Add null check. IntelliCode, you're helpful, but not what I want right now. So we effectively want to do something kind of like this. And the key part is all of these things should throw on failures. Let's see, you need to become async so that we can await the method. We only really need the element ID. So we don't really need anything else because this guy does track his own ID. So all elements that this library returns are given an ID so that follow-up methods can then act on that element. So let's see. So this is not going to be a property query. This is going to be effective background query. And this is going to be get effective background async. And then we'll do the same reply. And then here, I think there's no more error checking. If there's no error messages, we should just return color from ARGB. I can type. So reply alpha, reply red. Let's see, RG, and reply blue. Blue, 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 blue. What are you unhappy about? Cannot convert from int to byte. Well, that's simple. Cast. I don't know, and I'm open to suggestions if people have thoughts, but protocol buffers, if we pull them up, let's see, protocol, what is it, buffers, scalar types, I think is what it's called. Yeah, it's almost like I had this page open before. Scalar value types, right? So there is no great value for a byte, right? The one thing I did think about doing is realizing that what I need to pass is 4 bytes, and boy, that looks right about like 4 bytes. So rather than passing 4 ints and stripping off, 3/4 of the bits, I could pass a single int and just smash all the bits together. The speed and savings of those few bytes did not seem worth it to just typing int, or I guess int32 in this case. So this goes through here, and this works. Okay, so not what I wanted. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Back to my test. So this guy here, I want to be get effective background. We're not going to apply opacity to it at all. And I kind of just want to see what this gets back. All right, so this guy is going to query his effective background. And then we are going to get the foreground of the list box item. And we are going to assert that the contrast ratio between the foreground and the background is at minimum the contrast needed from the library for small text, which in this case is 4.5 to 1. So put these in here, cited the source. Hopefully they don't change their links again. Okay, here we go. Debug test. Go, 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 go. because I am trying to decide how far I push this library before I break down and put it into a NuGet package. That's ultimately where I'm trying to figure out where to draw the line at. Kind of hard to say. And then the hard part is naming the library. So I am open to suggestions. Okay, so get effect background. Give me a color. So then the question is, did it give me the right color? So it gave me FA, 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 FA. Okay, so let's keep that in mind. Let's see, and this gave me D00000. So I think both of these are correct. But what I am going to do, in the interest of everybody's favorite note-taking app, Notepad for the win. All right, so we're going to just copy value. So background, foreground. Okay, so I want to validate that these things are there, and then the question is, what is the contrast ratio between these two? Kind of want to know the return value. Locals, don't you show me? Was it the autos window? All right. Auto. Debug window autos. That's what I want. Do you not show me? One of you shows me. So let's see. Set next statement. Step over. Nope, you're not going to show it to me either. I thought one of these showed me the return value from the method. Whatever. Step over. Kind of want to know what this returns. So gimme. So that does not appear to be correct. Well, let me rephrase. It's not going to pass. Definitely pass muster. But there's now two outstanding questions, right? Is that color, are those two colors that it returned for the foreground and the background correct? And if so, is the contrast ratio correct? So this test should hopefully fail. And the test ends because, yeah, that is not close. So we are going to do a couple things. First of all, we're going to relaunch the test. And I'm going to show you my super secret way of testing these colors. Okay, so we're going to go back here. So you'll note that background color with the overlay there, right? So we do Alt print screen, and I open up paint.net. So we just straight up screenshot the guy, paste, expand the canvas. That sounds great. And then we go and we go a spelunking. So if we look at this color here, what is that color? E1, 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 which is surprisingly different than FA, FA, FA. Very different. So that's problem one. In regards to the foreground, this gets a little hard because of clear type. You can see that is that even right? So the colors here seem very, very. So let's. So that is black with some opacity. I'm very confident I've seen this color before. So if we look at our light theme, all right, material design body. This is pretty much the brush I would expect for all of the text on the screen. So the fact that that is coming back there, I believe is correct. Okay, just so we aren't crazy. So I believe the foreground is correct. The background, not so much. Not so much. The background, which is also the easiest one to check, should be somewhere more in the order of E1, E1, E1. Okay, so somebody got flattened and not clear who. So what we are going to do, this is one thing I haven't figured out a great way of individually of debugging this, right? Because in order to debug this, I have to execute this test, which means I have to execute the test on something, right? Or using something. But then I want to attach a debugger to the running app, which is, I wonder. We're going to try something. I have a theory that I could do just debugger attach. Let's try that. What happens if I do debugger attach here? That will pause, won't it? Wait, is it not debugger attach? What is it? Debugger launch. I would like to attach debugger to you. Okay, because I would like to effectively debug this call. Let's see if it'll let me attach. There. Okay, so I got the debugger window, and it wants to have me open a new instance of Visual Studio. Set, but I don't want grumble, 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 grumble. It also bothers me that both the preview version and the non-preview version are showing up the same. Trying to decide if I can get away with just opening a new instance of the solution, because it does not make a lot of sense to debug. Cancel. Yeah, it's probably gonna barf out on me here in a minute. Yeah, not horribly surprised. I'm gonna let this guy fire up, and then I'm gonna see if it'll let me. We're gonna see if we can do some Visual Studio Inception here. Because the other way I've been doing it is just moving this code into that execute method and then just running it directly, which works really well, right? Because this communication is just over named pipes. Okay, there we go. Now I've got my other instance of Visual Studio. Debugger launch, which is great, and I want to come down here to the service, and I want to basically grab it here. So continue, and if I step over here, got it, got him. Sweet. So we grab the background, we grab this. Okay, so the first guy that we get is our, oh, that's part of the problem. The element was a border, but our first ancestor was a list box item. Oh, that's part of the problem. Okay, so that answers that question. Stop and stop. So, wait. Having two Visual Studios on the same solution is going to be great. I can see it now. Oh, I have a bad feeling that this is going to be a different. Oh, this is not fun. Border has its own background. That does not instill warm, fuzzy feelings of happiness and joy. Okay, so you need to be framework elements. So that's the problem. It was filtering by control. Element get value. trying to decide the easiest way to go about doing this. So I could switch on the type. I could switch on the type itself. I guess that's probably the cleanest. All right, so switch on ancestor case. What is it? No, this is, oh, I can't remember the syntax. Let's see, C#8 switch pattern match, because I want to match on type. Great, that's an if. Type value, got it. So case border, right? Break. Case control, break. Default should just continue. Right, so loop to the next one. Let's see here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go with a brush background, because we're going to want to do this same bit of code in both cases. That goes there. That goes there. And in this case, background gets border background. In this case, background gets control background. And spelling counts all day long. Okay, so that explains a little bit. Let's see, that needs to be like there. Build. And let's see, you are going to be my de facto test runner. So finish compiling. We're gonna have fun having both of these Visual Studios fighting with each other, because they're both pointed at the same solution. Yeah, there's no way anything goes wrong with this idea. Okay, there. For reference, here's what the debugger window looks like. So I'm going to grab my other instance, which then starts flashing at me, which is great. I'm going to go F5. I don't think I need this anymore. I'm going to put this breakpoint here. And then we catch it on this side, and here we go. And I think what we're going to do is we're just going to move this down to here. So we did our element, should be the border. Great. Now we step, our first ancestor should be the border. Great. So this is, this is going to be wrong, because this does not take opacity into account. Because opacity can be specified either on the alpha channel of the brush or on the opacity of the control. So, kill. Let's fix that now too. So switch back to here. Double opacity. Actually, can I just grab it right off of ancestor? I can. Great. So since I can grab it right off of that, we'll just grab it down here where we need it. And you'll note there is an automatic stop case. So if we get to a fully opaque brush, we don't keep going up the hierarchy because there's no point. Okay. See, this is what happens when you write code late at night and then go to bed without testing it. it looks so good in the morning, and then you run it and realize, no, it doesn't actually do what I think it does. Click, 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 and grab my other instance of Visual Studio, to which the launch breaks, and then we F5 that, and we pick it up. Okay, so we grab the background color, this guy here. Okay, so I think that is correct. Though it does feel odd to be all zeros, but we're going to work with it for the moment. Let's see. So this guy here, I think it only works because I am fairly confident the converter there strips off the opacity and pushes it. So this guy here grabs the opacity, does the conversion, yada yada yada, flatten brush. So foreground here is probably about right. The source alpha is somewhat rounded down. You can see some of the rounding error because that came from a 0.1 and now we're at 0. That, hold on, I am confused. Is 25 just under? I'm not sure these source A and source B's work the way I expect. I would have thought them to go between. No, that makes sense because 25 would be roughly 10% of 255, so just a little under 10%. Okay. Yes, that does work. Because I was going to say, my assumption was these went from 0 to 1. Okay, so this does the negation, which technically I believe is the same as that. And then we do math, because lots of math. Edit. Hang on. We'll fix that later. Step. Background color. E6, E6, E6. Okay. I'm trying to decide how correct that is, but I don't see a reason to doubt it yet. Let's keep going. So this got up to a border here. Now this is interesting. So this guy's border has 0 opacity, so FF. So I'm sort of curious where this guy's going to land. So the width opacity shouldn't change it. Let's confirm that. That is true. The background is a bunch. I expect E6s to come out of this. Is that what I get? Yes. Math continues to work. Thank goodness. We get up to a control. This guy here has a background of what? Same thing. We expect the background color to not change and still be E6s, which it is. Let's see. So what is the guy here? Scroll viewer apparently has a background set. Great. Background is null. We're going to let it go. Background comes in here. What are you? There's another border. It's not going to change anything. Come back around. List box, not going to change anything. Circle back around. Null isn't going to change anything. Circle around. Null doesn't change anything. Not sure if that actually makes it go. So I'm going to just pin some stuff here so I can see them as they go without having to do this. So background is really all I'm interested in, is watching the ones with interesting brushes. There's a border. The background is FAFA. So that converted that in. Okay. I'm wondering if this is wrong, and we should be stopping at, this should probably stop at 255, not 0. That's probably backwards. Main window. Background is the same, which I think is a bug. Okay, so we have a bit of an issue. Okay, so let's fix a couple things here. So this really should be byte.maxValue. Go ahead and break. And I'm curious to look at this guy on his way up, because this guy returned FA all the way down. Great, not what I wanted. Okay, so flip back here. Boom. This guy here is just the negation. Right? Those are the same. 1 minus 2. Oh, no, that just flips the sign. But alpha should be between 0 and 1. If alpha should be between 0 and 1, on 0, it'll stay at 1. Oh, this is inverting it off of 1, not off 0. Okay. Got it. I can do math. Some days, some of the time, maybe, if I'm feeling it. Okay, so how to go about handling this? I kind of want to do a couple things. Well, because we know what the correct answer is, right? We're looking for something that resembles E1, E1, E1. Right? So that's where we're looking to go. And we'll test our colors in here as we go. So let's go back to my dedicated unit test runner and kick him off. So debug test, and away we go. I am surprised that we seem to hit I think my code that's dropping alpha is problematic. Given that we have an early exit, I think we're going to run into a quick, I think that's going to be our first bit of issue, right? So let's see. Background color with opacity, right? So I expect to get a color that's, and this is going to be the issue, right? Is this went straight opaque. And that, I believe, is what is wrong. So let's just set next. Excuse me. Set next statement. Sorry, something got in my throat. Okay. So it doesn't matter what this brush is, right? But any color laid on top of transparent should just be itself, right? That's effectively the identity. So, and this guy does have an opacity, so we step in. and I believe this is part of the problem, is this guy is coming in with an opacity. How do I blend those? Because the alpha channel should do what? If I have a color with an alpha channel on top of an opaque one, I expect opaque is the end result. But if I have a 25% here and a 50% here, okay, the Googles need to help me. Let's see, merge two RGBA colors by combining two colors. So resulting alpha, that is alpha A is alpha B times 1 over resulting color components. CA, CB, or 1 over. Porter Duff over mode. See, this is what I was looking for. Maths. Lots of maths. This is helpful. That is a lot of math for what I want is here. So, we need one more component. One more component. Stop. Stop executing. Let's see. Hold on. Paste that in. This gets up, I'm going to have to run inside and go grab something to clear my throat with. Let's see. So, new alpha gets, let's see, so A, foreground. The question is, what is these units that this is supposed to be in? I believe this is probably going to be SRCA plus background SRCA times alpha reverse. Okay, from, I believe it's ARGB. New alpha. Alright, so this is going to be, so that's going to be times byte max value. Alright, and this will go down to a byte. Just trim it. Give or take a little bit. Okay, try it again. Let's see where we're going. All this just so that we can do it. Because I do have a really strong suspicion that there will be a lot of cases that I start to find inside the library where the accessibility rules are being violated. So this sort of came up because somebody asked about the color theme for the snack bar control inside of dark theme, because the background is light with dark text, which seems wrong for a dark mode. And what I discovered is there's not a very clear theme for it. And so I was trying to figure out what it should be, and that's what led me down this path. Is I wanted to know what the correct answer was. So here we go. So we get this. Great. So new alpha. And that basically returned back the exact same thing, which sort of makes sense because 0 times anything is just going to be that. Which is important because that means that this background color is no longer going to meet that requirement and is going to have some level of matching. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to just sit here until we get, so that shouldn't change it. That won't change it. That won't change it. That won't change it. Basically just watching that alpha channel. And anytime I see a null brush or an alpha channel is 0, okay, so this will cause a change. I wonder where this is at. So this came off of a border control. Okay. So FA, FA, FA. So, and the opacity is 1, so it should show up. So I am very curious where this guy is located. So there is a border control somewhere on here that has a very dark color that I'm not entirely clear where it is located. So we started from here. And let's just start working our way up and see if we can find background. Why? So that's not you, border. It's not you, border. Not you, border. Material design paper. So FA, FA, FA. The problem is that did not merge correctly. Okay, so this is the one that we're looking to get. So material design paper. That is the expected bit, but that did not combine with this appropriately. Right? That is just retrieving the material design paper brush, which is not what we expect. So let's go back. Figure out what we did wrong here. Because for the most part, there's no issue here. Yep, run. Okay. So that got me something that looks sort of like that. So the 19E6s. We're just going to keep running until we hit the other brush. Oh, shoot. Go back and do it again. How do I... This may or may not work because I think the background color's changed. Yeah, this isn't going to give me the right color. How do I get back into the right state? So go ahead and run. Let's see, I just back you up. Let's see, how far back do I need to go? Set next statement. I need to go above the mouse over. So let's see. That did not work. So here we go again. Let's try this. Just relaunch the test. My cup is empty. Here's the best part. I'll demonstrate this. In the bottom, there's a little air symbol at the bottom of it. Because why not? Okay, so let's verify we get the right thing here. Okay, so we've got there. I'm sort of curious to see. Let's see. RGBA merge. I'm sort of curious. I kind of want to test if somebody's got a little JavaScripty one that will do this for me. Combine two colors. Because I'm sort of curious to see if it's me or if it's someone else. The problem is this doesn't have alpha. I need alpha channel 2. Color mixer. That doesn't have, well, do you handle alpha? 19, let's see, E1, E1, E1. Submit. No, that is not going to work. I don't want to mix. I just want, somebody has to have. Yeah, so aside from trying to hit an exact mark there, supply RGA color maker. It's not a merge. Don't care. Color 1, 19, E1, E1, E1. You are not helpful. Not helpful. Mixing RG. You just want something that works. Uh, 19. E1, E1, E1. Yeah. What color do you need? I need all color. I want to work with let's see. This is not what we want. So let's keep this guy going and see if I can make sure to stop now on the appropriate one. No. We're looking for where background actually gets fixed value. Okay, this one. Alright, so with opacity, it's a 1, doesn't matter, go in. Okay, so foreground, oh, I wonder if this is the problem. I've got my foreground and background backwards. That might be the bug there. Yeah, I've got these colors inverted. So what happens if we invert them back? Okay, we're going to stop this again. Yeah, stop this, and we're going to try this one more time. I'm wondering if just having those colors backwards, that will probably make a big difference. Because it does matter, like obviously the layering. If you have the opaque color on top of the transparent color, you don't see the transparent color. So let's once again do the debugging thing. Launch there. Background color. So background color is okay. So that even looks better. Okay, this is feeling a little more my style. Okay, so that should not change anything. I guess it does change the zeros to E6s. Is that correct? If there is that doesn't seem right. Because if the color is so if background A equals 0, we're just going to skip the math because I don't want to deal with rounding errors. If there is no alpha, there's no point in doing math. Yeah. Okay. Once again, same song, 18th verse. This time it'll work. I promise. I promise. So I really, really, really want to get this accessibility stuff going. And then the question will be, do we try and push the library further, or do we just go out and nougatize it? Because it would be kind of cool to nougatize it. And I love DevOps, but I kind of want to learn GitHub Actions a little better. So a simple project like this might be a good use case for some GitHub Actions, just so I can have a sample of it. Okay, so that gets me to there, which kind of makes sense. Okay, next one. So this guy here should change background color nada. Excellent. There. Okay, this is the one. So that looks like E1, E1, E1. And if I recall correctly, that is exactly what we see when we screenshot it. Thank goodness. Math works. Okay, early exit. Okay, so that gets us out of here, gets us back here. So that got us our effective background. Our foreground registered as that, and now we check our contrast ratios. So we do some math. Relative luminance, 0, and 1.5, and step, and check our immediate window. Okay, something is off with my colors. That is clear. The question is what? All right, so the first thing I note is my foreground has an alpha, which means its color isn't fully known. Right? So you can't paint this color per se without, like, you can't get its full backgroundy effect, right? So this guy is foreground, right? So this is a bunch of zeros. So this guy goes 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Right? And then the opacity is, what are you? 221. 221. So this is very much if I was to scribble this out here, right? That's the color. All right, so but that color doesn't tell me much, because that color should look. Why do those colors look identical? I would imagine that they should show slightly different based upon whether, for example, if I draw it on red. Oh, that's lovely. All right. Maybe it's my screen. I'm having a very hard time seeing that color. 221. All right, so this we're down at 150. And we started drawing. So 221, black, black. And there is a difference, but hoy, that is a very, 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 very small subtle difference. So that is black. That is very much black. And E1, E1, E1 is at 255 is very much white. So how that leads me to believe that my measurement of luminance is wrong, because black and white should be, well, we could write a quick unit test over this contrast ratio, but the contrast from black to white should be as big as possible, right? Which I think it goes up from, it's supposed to range up to like 24, I think is the max. So let's step into this, because I don't actually know. Let's see. Let's see if we get something. Let's see. Calculate. I think this guy here had a link to a. There's also an interactive SVG version. This is helpful, but I thought there was, I believe this one there is. So contrast between two colors. So background white, which is pretty much what we've got. Let's see. RGB. And we have, well, let's just put in black, right? So white and black, we expect to get a value of 21, give or take a little bit. I'm thinking I want to flatten foreground onto his effective background. Simply so that if foreground has an opacity, I actually get its true rendered color. And again, clear type is a bit of a mixed bag, because I'm not going to control all the pixels, but that's okay. So that makes sense. So I'm looking for a 21. I don't think that makes any difference. Okay, so let's just do this real quick. So public class color test, right? And we're gonna do X unit public void contrast ratio. Right, so how about let's actually do something legitimate. Color mixins tests, right? And we will do a theory, and we will go with that'll be too much effort. Fact for now. Fact for now. And let's do var ratio gets colors black, contrast ratio colors white, assert true, that ratio is greater than or equal to, and I'm going to give it a little bit of padding and just say 20, right? And so spelling once again counts, and we're going to run the test, see where that lands me. So where did you get me to? So clearly there's a bug in this code, but I'm not entirely sure if perhaps the issue is if there's a rounding error. All right, so let's set next statement, step in. Okay, so the relative luminance 0, 2.1 and a little bit. So the fact that black registers as 0 makes a lot of sense. Let's see, relative luminance. Let's look at this again here. Boom, boom, boom. And so this should end up as 1 for white. So the fact that this returned 2.1 is probably a bug. So that seems to be the most logical place to start. So this guy here, 1, 1, 1. So how would this math work out? So if all of these bits are 1, else, so if this ends up being 1 plus, so this should end up being 1 plus 155 divided by 1 over 1.55 raised to the power of 2.4 squared. So what did I do wrong? That is probably what's wrong. Let's just confirm that that is in fact. Yeah. So that's a mistake. So 0, 1. Okay, now we're in business. All right, so now we get back. Okay, so I'm still not confident that that is correct. A relative luminance is clearly correct. So 0 and 1. So this would be 0 plus 0.5 divided by 1. So this is always the smaller. Because L1 will always be smaller than L2. Let's just confirm that, because I did somewhat based upon this. The lighter colors So let's take a look at this article again. Color contrast checker. Boom, boom, boom. Let's see, contrast ratio. Okay, this is perfect, right? So if I have a foreground of black, right? So there's black and a background color of white. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The contrast ratio should be 21. Okay. So, yeah. So let's go back to here. So something is contrast. Let's see. I want to know how to measure contrast. Did I get it wrong? So let's see here. Boom, boom, boom. And I'm thinking the color backgrounds when showing foreground colors are either off-white. You avoid black or white because they are generally harsher. That makes sense. So this is great, but what I really want to see is maths. I want to see this. Standard deviation. Let's see, the formula L1 and L2 contrast is based upon here. I want to see the formula because I've clearly made a mistake somewhere. Let's see here. So let's see. So there's clearly. Okay, so I'm clearly doing something wrong because this formula as presented before would not make sense. Relative luminance. Do you have contrast? Contrast ratio. L1 contrast ratios can range to L1 plus 0.5 divided by L. So this, let's see, contrast ratio. Did I spell it wrong? Window. Just do this. So we're gonna update my link in here. I think to indicate where I get my maths from, because this is at least a more authoritative link, I would argue, rather than based on there. So L1 is 0.5 and L2 . 0.05 contrast ratios can range from 1 to 21, commonly written as 1 to 1 or 21 to 1. Okay. But here's my problem. If this relative luminance of black is supposed to be 0, and the relative luminance of white is supposed to be 1, this formula now nets me something. I'm missing something very obvious. This does not get me where I expect to be. So let's see. Contrast ratios. Because authors do not have control over user settings as to how text is rendered, for example, font smoothing or anti-alias, the contrast ratio can be evaluated with font turned off. This effectively also applies to things like clear type. Let's see. Purposes of success criteria. Contrast is measured with respect to the specified background over which the text is rendered in normal usage. If no background is specified, white is assumed. Background color is the specified color of content over which, if there's a failure of no background color. Okay, so you have to specify both colors. Got it. When there is a border around the letter, a border can add contrast, which should be used in calculating contrast between letter. A narrow border around the letter would be used as the letter. A wide border fills the inner details. Next is a halo would be considered a background. Okay. I am missing something very obvious that apparently everyone else has come to. L1 is the relative luminance of the lighter of the colors. Okay. I mean, I'm with you there. I get it, right? The lighter of the colors. L2 is the relative luminance of the darker of the colors. Of any point in a color space, normalized to 0 for darkest black and 1 for lightest white. Okay. I totally get this. Again, the part that bothers me, L1 is the lighter of the two colors. So set next. Okay, L1 is 0. Lighter. 0. Dark. Let's try this again. That's the problem. Lighter, black is 0, white is 1. Lighter, bigger. Hey, that looks pretty close to 21. 20.99999. Yeah, that's within floating point. Okay. Okay, so now we've got that. And I'm gonna just extract this out, right? Var contrast ratio. That took way too long of staring at it to realize what I had done wrong. It seemed like such a simple formula. Proof that it doesn't matter how smart you are, you can still make silly mistakes. Contrast ratio. Okay, so I kind of want to look at this and debug test. Oh, this is going to hit my other debug statements. Oh well, we'll just hit cancel when we hit that. So cancel the other debugger. Contrast ratio is 12 something, and our minimum is 4.5. We pass. Go! We can now successfully check contrast ratios. Now, we do need to do one more thing because this isn't a great check, right? Because this is a foreground color with an alpha, which is not fully reflective of its rendered color without knowledge of its background. And we know its background, so we flatten it. So, we need to public static color flatten. How about flatten onto this color foreground ground color background. All right, and so we will go and grab my other method that we were using. We'll fix up some nullability bits here in a minute. Let's see, flatten color. I want you. Boom. Color mixins. Okay, so good. We named them the same. The usage may be different, but the names of the variables have been preserved. So we're going to do these because it is not apparent what the types are. It's not apparent to me. So we are going to change this guy here. Let's see, var foreground gets. We're going to just give some meaning to these variables because right now there's too much on one line. Let's see. So background color gets foreground flatten onto like that. All right, that looks a little cleaner. That means you're meaningless. Great. That works there. That works there. We're going to come back down. Nope. Let's see. Switch back to the other one here. And list box tests. Let's see. Let's see. 20.9. Actual value should be 21, allowing for floating point rounding errors. All right, we'll keep this around. This is ultimately probably going to move into a unit test project for this guy rather than in here, but and actually let's bring you up to the root namespace because you don't need to be buried down there. You have nothing to do with the stuff that's down there. Great. Okay, so this guy should still pass, but we want to do foreground gets foreground flatten onto effective background. All right. So let's just double check this guy here. I'm going to come back up to here and turn off my debugger launch because that's getting annoying. Compile. Let's see. Which one am I working in? Which one am I working in? Can't tell which one I'm in. Close you. You lose. Okay. And list box tests and debug test. Oh, it rendered onto the wrong monitor, which means the contrast ratio is higher than it should have been because it must have gotten correct. So let's see, FF2121. I kind of want to test this again. Bring you back over here. Pin. Stay there. Debug test. A little curious why it decided it was going to launch on the other monitor. Not real sure. Okay, so foreground there, right? And I want to flatten it onto an effective background. Let's see, so F2121, does that roughly line up with what we saw when we looked at this guy? It's really hard to tell with the clear type stuff, but are we getting roughly a seeing like the 37 versus the 21? Again, it's hard to tell because of the way the text is being rendered. I almost want to turn off clear type and see, because I can't tell how much of this is the clear type blue rendering onto here. But regardless, I believe this gives us a much better idea of what the contrast ratio should be expected to be, and 18 is significantly higher than the 4.5, which easily passes our test. So text should be readable, darn it. That is the moral of the story. Make your app accessible. Okay, so we're going to check this in. Checking this in. Getting contrast ratio working. Okay. And as much as I want to dive straight into pulling this guy into a NuGet package, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to look and just deal with the nullability warnings in this library, and I may call it a night there and see where that gets me, because that'll probably get me pretty close. So dereferencing a possibly null value. So let's just go through this guy, because this guy's probably going to be the biggest offender. Let's see. So reply may be null here. And the only reason it thinks that, why does it think reply could be null here? How the heck would it get into here? Let's see. So get cached element window, right? So this could theoretically be get parent element is allowed to return null. So let's deal with that. So that'll allow that. I do not understand why it thinks reply is possible here. We're just going to turn it off, because there's no functional way. Reply gets set immediately out the gate. Let's see, this guy goes there, right? Because parent element can return null. We know it because we're checking it for null here. Let's see here. So coming in, we're just going to turn null forgiveness on and say, nope, not possible. Let's see, get cached element. This guy is possible to return null, so we need to do that. Let's see, try get value. I believe that needs to go like that. Known elements. Let's take a look at this. Let's see here. So this wants this, but try get value is decorated to know that this is, even though this is a nullable reference type, that this will not be null if this returns true. So it doesn't require the null check here. This is definitely nullable. Just move that down. Let's see. That is not nullable. We do allow a null to come in there because we explicitly check it. We technically allow a null here. So we'll do that. Clean this up, clean this up, clean this up. It's probably good to start at the bottom and work my way up. Let's see here. So this will just go back up to the top and keep working down. So get cached element. This should be nullable. This should be nullable. And found property should be nullable. Not sure if this guy is expected to be nullable or not. It's kind of hard to tell. Let's see, you are definitely nullable. And you don't matter. You will never return null values. Away we go there. You are definitely nullable. You are definitely nullable because you're being assigned null right there. And that works there. You get to be nullable. You get to be nullable. Right, you know you're not null. This is definitely nullable. So we're assigning it there. Let's see, you are definitely returning a nullable. Let's see, result current. You should be nullable. All right, and I kind of want to look at evaluate query. Where are you used? Oh, you're already set up to handle it. Look at that. Look at all those warnings gone. Easy mode. Easy. Nullability was easy. Should have turned it on a long time ago. Let's see here. Let's see. Does not have a strong name. Does not have a strong name. Don't know if I care. This guy. Hi again. I have a question that stopped me from learning C#. I hope you have the answer. Is it illegal to build apps with Visual Studio Community Edition and sell it, or are there some conditions? So the conditions around, so let me start with saying I am not a lawyer. However, Visual Studio Community. So you can, let's see, I believe build and sell apps with Visual Studio Community. There is some restrictions around who can use it. So specifically around if you're just like a solo indie developer, you are fine. The problem comes with if you're working for like a large company, and I'm trying to remember exactly where yeah. So for an individual, so if you're just building your own apps by yourself, you can use Visual Studio. It can be a free or a paid app. You're good to go. Visual Studio Community for organizations, and this is where it gets a little weird, and I'll drop this link in the chat for you as well. For organizations, there is a limit. So basically, if you are working for a large organization and they define it as greater than 250 PCs or $1 million in annual revenue, you are not allowed to use Community Edition for that process, right? They basically don't want large companies skipping out on buying Visual Studio. And with that said, usually if you're in a company that is this size or larger, they should probably be looking at buying MSDN subscriptions anyway. They're by far a better deal. The higher SKUs of Visual Studio are really nice and come with a lot of features that can be incredibly helpful beyond just what's available in Community. But if you are just building C# by yourself and you're worried about building apps and selling them, don't be. You are good to go. Like I said, if you're working for a company, don't take this as legal advice. This would be the criteria that they're looking at for whether you're allowed to use it or not, right? So Non-enterprise organizations up to 5 users can use community. And if you're in an enterprise organization where, again, they define it as this, they don't want you using community. They expect you to be buying Visual Studio Pro or Enterprise instead. So hopefully that answers that question. So I would say don't worry about using it if you're by yourself. If you're in an organization, they should probably look at this. If you're in a big organization, they definitely should take a good close look at this before deciding whether they're going to leverage it or not. And I realize for some companies that can be a bit of a problem. If you're in a company that primarily works with like Java, and you've got a small number of developers trying to switch over to .NET, sometimes it can be hard to get to steer the whole organizational boat around to look at something like this, but that is the rules as Microsoft has laid them out. So hopefully that helps. Okay, so back on nullability. So get main window. This is definitely a nullable interface. And that's now unhappy because that no longer aligns with this guy. This should be fine. No, we are not doing that. Let's see. So get resource. This guy should either return a value or throw, which is exactly what he does. This guy should never return a null, always an empty collection instead. Great. Possible null reference return. So let's see. Set Xaml content. This guy. So that's going to change that. And I should probably do some renaming in here while we're in here. So let's see. What are you unhappy about? Why did you go to float? Use explicit type. Let's see. So this should probably be something like coordinates. Bounding rectangle might be even better. Yeah, come back to it. There's all that. There's all that. Great. Just keep going. Oh yeah, this was fun. Possible null reference return. Get value as. So I think we have to do return maybe null. Yeah. Good luck building your apps. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to drop in. Always happy to do my best to try and answer them as best I can. Can't promise I'll always have them, but I always try. Let's see. So this guy here, converting a null literal to a possible non-null. Why was I converting this to a dynamic? Because I can't convert to a T? Was that the magical reason that I was invoking the DLR? I don't know why I was writing code late at night. I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know. It shouldn't be possible to hit the else case, so that should be pretty much all we need there. So let's see, get value as T. Possible. How do I declare task of T may be nullable? That's an interesting question. So I wonder if the compiler is smart. Return may be null. Is it smart enough to figure that out? So it's not smart enough to figure that out. So I'm going to have to come back to that one because I don't know how to solve that one. That one's an interesting use case. So this guy here is clearly nullable because the default is null. So that's an easy one. Strong name, strong name. So we're down to just this. How to declare this. I don't know how to express this. Because I need to express the t parameter may be null. How does one do this? So we're going to cheat, and I'm going to look here. So for people who watched a while back, several weeks ago, I went and did the nullable reference types on system command line, the core library at least. So it was a fun spelunking expedition. I'm trying to think of... Do we have task of t used anywhere? Because I am trying to see. Oh dear heavens, that is okay. Not doing that. Not doing that. Apparently I don't have it saved in my recents, so one moment and I will grab it. Open with Preview Visual Studio, please. We'll take a look. I'm just curious. This would be the only place I would know of where I've done this before, and I don't recall what the solution was. Let's see here real quick. Don't need RabbitMQ anymore. Open a repo. Dev command line. And I'm probably only behind master by a few million commits. So let's see. Fetch origin. Let's see. Master branch. Let's see. Reset master to this commit. Just go. Boom. Okay, so yeah, that probably changed everything. Go reload yourself and be happy. And I want to see, do you have a task of t anywhere? So bring you back onto the right monitor. Task of t, find all. That's not a good thing. I am going to have to look this up. I do not know how to express the nullability of this method. Because this t may be null. Let's see. Do I have? Let's do this, right? Allow null. No. Is there some other attribute? Does not return. Maybe null. Yeah. So one quick Google search. I'm sorry. Bing search, because we always Google with Bing. Let's see. C# null reference types. Maybe null generic type. Designing null reference types with generic return type. That's kind of what I'm thinking I've got, right? So this is what we've done before, right? Because you can specify an attribute on the return type, which is fine. They link to Microsoft Docs. This is fine, except for when we're talking about an async method. Because I want async and generics and nullable reference types put together. That is not useful information. Ooh, what are these? Oh, these are not nearly as cool as I thought they were. Okay, I will have to look that up. But at least it looks like the warnings are limited to only a few places. So I'm going to turn this off, make sure that goes away. Let's see here. So flipping back to here, I do think one of the next rounds is probably going to be either nugatize this or auto-generate the WPF applications. So what do I mean by that? So right now, these UI tests, we'll have to check the whole stream later. Interesting stuff. See ya. Hey Magnus, glad to see you. Glad you're enjoying it. I've been poking more at it, so the whole stream is largely around dealing with color contrast and accessibility with this new UI testing stuff. The next round of stuff that I'm thinking I want to do is around the way the app works for this is because right now I'm relying very heavily on being able to inject this Xaml straight into a user control. And what I think would probably be better is if rather than relying on this app to be there, be compiled and set up correctly. Because the unfortunate part is right now, because I'm relying on this user control, if I want to tweak my app.xaml, it's going to affect every single one of my tests. That's not ideal, right? I want to have some level of control over the app itself. And so I'm envisioning having a shell of an app that that this library can use. That way, there's nothing that needs to be written up here. All right. So this guy down here effectively becomes a small WPF library in and of itself that can be fired off and start and run. That then kicks off and does all of the things. So that's where I'm thinking this is going to go. I think. Don't know for sure. But I think that makes the most sense. That way, it's fairly simple. That then also raises the question, because right now this is just passing in XAML. How do I test bindings? Right? Because ultimately, I want to be able to control the application level resource dictionary. I want to control the content that is displayed inside of that. Ideally, I'm just going to drop in fragments. But some of those fragments may need bindings to some context and how to do that. I've got a thought in that the context will always be a single object, but I'm thinking it will be a remotable object back to something in this process space, which just sounds cool to me. I could be wrong, but that sounds pretty cool. I think it's cool. So because bindings can only operate across properties, I'm pretty sure I just do some fancy remoting and have the data context live in the unit test process, but be bound in the WPF app process. So that's where I'm thinking I might want to go before I nugatize this, is have all of that built up so that it works. That's my thinking. And that is where I think I'm probably going to go next. But it is about 11 o'clock, and I'm actually at a good stopping point at 11, which is unusual for me. So, fixing nullability warnings. Do this and push. And again, if anybody's interested in seeing this code or touching it and playing with it, the link for it is sitting out on my fork right there. And we will go from there. So I think with that, I'm probably going to sign off. Say thank you guys for joining in. Appreciate the questions. And until next time, happy coding. Talk to you later.